Hello, 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 and welcome back, YouTube. This is G Sharp Jams here at FX Studio 2 in my mini studio back here. This is my project studio where I just do a little bit of mastering and put things together. I was just working on a project, about to get that done. But anyway, today's video is going to be all about classic analog gear. Now, we all know that there's a lot of analog gear that's out there, a lot of different choices that you have, be it a compressor, a preamp, a recording console, whatever the case may be. There's a lot out there. However, over the course of time, there are only a few that are considered classics to this day. They came out many, many years ago, and in some cases, many, many decades ago. In this video, we're going to go all the way back to 1949, right up to the present day, and take a look at some of that classic gear that just breathes magic into the work that you put in a studio. I'll be back at the end of the video to wrap everything up for you, so sit back, get your popcorn, get yourself something to drink, and enjoy the video.
In a world where every click is digital, sound can still bleed soul. Where circuits and cold precision threaten to erase the warmth, there exists a sanctuary, a place where machines breathe, where iron and glass, valves and tape, live in harmony. This is the analog realm, the sacred ground of vintage compressors, tube preamps, and analog consoles. The gear that refuses to die. Tonight, we descend into the heart of the studio, to unearth the souls of machines, to feel the hiss, the hum, and the crackle, to reclaim the human heartbeat behind music. Get ready. The journey starts now.
Today we live in an era when everything from recording to mixing is increasingly digital or in the box. But as I discussed in a previous video, there's just something magical about analog gear. The consoles that color your sound, microphones that add character, compressors that breathe life into a track, and studios that literally have history built into their walls. Today I'm going to talk about the classics and what makes a piece of analog gear a classic. Then take a look at a few examples of consoles, outboard gear, microphones, and some famous studios, and why they're still relevant today. But first, let's define what makes a piece of gear classic. This is the story of analog, a journey back to the hallowed halls of vintage recording studios and the iconic gear that shaped the sound of generations. Our story begins in the post-war boom, an era of rapid technological advancement, particularly in audio. So what makes gear a classic, and not only the gear, but the studio where the recordings take place as well? First, design innovation or uniqueness, where the gear was either one of the first in its category or it introduced something new to something that already existed. Going back to the quote from Rupert Neve, he went on to say, "We never reach that perfection, but you can go on searching for it." If you take a look at the Neve MVP, it's not vintage, but it did introduce something innovative to the recording industry with the stereo field editor. It doesn't necessarily have to be vintage to be a classic.
The next factor that contributes to an analog device being considered a classic is timeless sonic character. We're talking warmth, richness, harmonic distortion, and headroom, often from tubes, transformers, or discrete circuit design. That sound that only comes from expert craftsmanship, quality components, and wiring done the old school way. which also goes hand in hand with durability and build quality. As the old saying goes, they just don't make them like they used to. The older vintage, now classic gear was built to last. Again, top-notch craftsmanship. Then there's the historical usage of the gear. Think of your favorite artist or band that had that distinct sound. Immediately, record labels like Motown or groups like Pink Floyd come to mind. Those records just had their own signature sound. And it was the gear, the audio engineer, and the physical recording studio that made it all happen. And here's the biggest reason why something becomes a classic: continued relevance. Gear that is either still in use today, reissued, or highly sought after. Or clones of the original are being made. Remember the old saying? Imitation is the greatest form of flattery. And now, let's take a look at some key milestones that forever
In
changed the
1949, the
industry.
mic that started it all, or at least the post-World War II era, the Neumann U was introduced. This thing was one of the first large diaphragm tube condenser mics, and it quickly became the mic. Think of all those classic records from the 50s and 60s, the Beatles. They were all over the U-47. It was the sound. Fast forward just 11 years to 1960, and Neumann does it again with the U-67. This was another incredible tube mic, but it gave engineers a slightly smoother, more forgiving high-end compared to the almost aggressive character of the U-47. It was like giving them two amazing flavors to choose from. Imagine an entire galaxy of gear emerging in the studio. Boxes that let engineers sculpt sound with insane control. Two pieces quickly shot to legendary status: the Fairchild 670 compressor and the Pultec EQP1A equalizer. Take the Fairchild 670, which came out in the 1960s. It's not just a compressor, it's a sonic enhancer. Its crazy variable mute tube design gave you this unbelievably smooth musical compression. It literally glues a mix together. You hear it on countless classics from Motown to the Beatles. And honestly, the fact that the original units cost a fortune today tells you everything you need to know about its magic. The Pultec EQP1A equalizer, also from the 60s, is equally revered. This is the weird, brilliant thing that it does. Instead of just cutting or boosting a frequency, the Pultec lets you boost and attenuate the same frequency simultaneously. It sounds counterintuitive, but it creates this unique, beautiful tone-shaping effect. It's what adds that breathy air to a vocal, that solid weight to a kick drum, and that pure clarity to a guitar. I have personally used one in my commercial studio years ago, and today I use the Warm Audio Clone. It lives on my acoustic guitar track, and it was the secret weapon at places like Sunset Sound and Electric Lady Studios. Look, there's a simple reason we still chase the sound of a U-47 or a Fairchild 670. It's more than just nostalgia. It's about how these things naturally interact with the sound, how the tubes compress, how they distort in a truly pleasing way. Digital can get close, sure, but it rarely captures that organic, living response. And that's why today, there's a resurgence. Boutique companies are painstakingly recreating these circuits, and the originals are selling for ridiculous amounts. Engineers and artists are simply rediscovering the distinct sonic advantage and the sheer joy of working with these vintage machines.
Thanks for inviting me to be a part of this. I'd like to share with you a great story on how this gear becomes part of music history, using the Helios and Led Zeppelin as an example. One of the best-known Helios boards was installed at Island Records' Basing Street Studios in London in 1969. It was a 20-input desk, and that console was a key part of the sound from about 1970 to 1974. So, where does Led Zeppelin fit in? In December of 1970, Led Zeppelin started sessions for their untitled fourth album. You know it as Led Zeppelin 4. Some of that work happened at Basing Street, running through that very Helios console. In fact, their most iconic track, Stairway to Heaven, was largely completed there. Jimmy Page even came back later to track his epic guitar solo on that Helios board. It's a testament to the magic of the gear in the room.
Moving into the late 1970s, you see a widespread use of outboard gear like the LA2A, LA3A, and Pultec EQs. Producers were hooked on the smooth musical compression and EQ these units offered. They were just more pleasing than the harsher, solid-state, or early digital tools. The 1980s bring us into the modern era. SSL consoles are still dominating, with major advancements in routing and automation. Outboard racks are expanding with interesting stuff from companies like Eventide and Manley. Even as digital recording becomes more popular, a lot of producers still prefer tracking or mixing through analog gear because it just has that character. And this is where all the pieces come together, in the studios. The soul of Sound City. Sound City Studios, opened in 1969 in Van Nuys, LA, is a perfect example. Its signature sound comes almost entirely from that custom-built Neve 8028 console. It was the heart of the Sound City identity. The studio was also famous for its drum room acoustics. Many engineers said you could set up a kit there, and it would sound amazing instantly. Fleetwood Mac first used Sound City in the mid-1970s, but their most famous connection is during the Rumors era. While they used a few different places, major parts of that album, especially overdubs, vocals, and guitar parts, were recorded or mixed right there. What gear did they use? The centerpiece was, of course, the Neve 8028. They were recording to 24-track tape machines, which meant a lot of track juggling. And they were smart about mics, using ones less susceptible to bleed, like SM57s, SM58s, and 441s. So why Sound City for Fleetwood Mac? It was the combination of the gear, the Neve, the incredible room acoustics, and the overall analog workflow. All those things gave the album a richness and character that helped define their sound. That classic Rumors recording became the imprint of Sound City's gear, and that incredible vibe stayed with the band throughout their career. You see how it all connects. It's the artist, the gear, and the studio that create the soul of the sound. Other famous spots? The Hit Factory in New York during the 70s and 80s had classic Neve, SSL, and API consoles, not to mention incredible tape machines. And of course, Olympic Studios in the UK, with those original Helios consoles, gave us Jimi Hendrix and Led Zeppelin.
Let's continue our journey with a brief discussion about some real legends behind the desk because let's face it, without the audio engineer, there is no sound. First, Bill Putnam. You could say Bill invented modern recording. He's often dubbed the father of modern recording. He didn't just sit in studios, he built them, founded Universal Audio, and created the iconic 1176 LN limiter. What set him apart was his attitude. He treated the gear not just like tools, but as creative collaborators. He believed in pushing them, not just obeying specs. Next, there's John Palladino, someone deeply rooted in the tape era. He worked at Capitol Records through the rise of analog tape, adopting Ampex recorders and refining techniques like close miking, EQ, and tape editing. He had a strong preference for capturing performances live. For him, overdubs should serve the music, not dominate it. Next, Walter Sear. In New York, Walter Sear ran Sear Sound, a studio people went to not just for a room, but for gear. His collection was legendary: vintage mics, rebuilt Studer machines, some parts even traced back to Abbey Road, and all kinds of analog treasures. Artists came because they wanted that tone, that character, and Sear's studio gave them access to it. Then there's Russell Elevato. Mr. Elevato is like a bridge to the past. He still leans heavily on analog workflow, often recording to tape even today. You'll see his name on dozens of albums where that analog path is central to the sound. He shows us that vintage isn't dead, it's alive, breathing, and working. Next, Peter Mew. Peter Mew might be less of a household name outside audiophile circles, but his work at Abbey Road speaks volumes. He started out as a tape operator and climbed the ranks to become a senior mastering engineer there. His mission was preserving the acoustics, the space, and the sonic vibe of the rooms and gear he inherited. Decades of working with tape, consoles, and acoustic treatments shaped his sense of what's real and musical. Next up, Rupert Neve. Okay, he wasn't a studio engineer per se, but Rupert Neve's influence cannot be ignored. His designs literally shaped the playing field. So what do we learn from these talented engineers? Trust what you hear more than what you see. These engineers trained their ears, learned their rooms, and made decisions from sound. Second, use gear as a musical voice. The best engineers didn't treat hardware as a sterile path. They used it as a creative tool. Next, take care of your gear. Vintage circuits, transformers, and tapes all demand respect, alignment, upkeep. And finally, embrace hybrid workflows. Even today, many engineers insert analog gear within digital sessions for that extra flavor. Analog recording isn't just a throwback nostalgia act. It's a mindset, a palette, a way of listening. These engineers remind us that the magic often lives in the ears, in the willingness to push, to persevere, and to listen deeply. So we've traveled back in time from London in 1949 to studio gear from the 50s, 60s, and modern day. We looked at how that gear has shaped our industry over the last 76 years. 76 years. Hard to believe. The question is, where will we be in the next 76 years? What new innovative designs and advancements in technology will occur? What gear that exists now will we be calling a classic in the next 20 years? I have a few ideas. How about the Neve 542 or the Empirical Labs Distressor? What do you think? Drop a comment in the comments box below and share your opinions. I'd love to hear what you think will be a classic 20 years from now. What piece of gear do you think had the biggest impact on music? Now, I'll send it over to G Sharp to wrap this all up for us.
Okay, so welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that video. Put a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of research in writing that script for this video. Hope you got something out of it. Hope you enjoyed it. Let's wrap this up. What is it that makes a piece of analog gear a classic? To answer that question, I'm going to give you a short story. When I was growing up, my father was a very, very big New York Yankees fan. Now, me personally, I was a New York Mets fan. But after a while, sitting there and watching him watch the Yankees, I started to watch with him. And it started to dawn on me just how incredible this team was. And not just that one team at that particular time, but the history behind this team. Now, you think of names like Mickey Mantle and Babe Ruth and Joe DiMaggio and Reggie Jackson. These are classic names. And that's why I like to tell people that the Yankees aren't just a baseball team. They are baseball history. There's a big difference there. Now, I know that there are a lot of people out there that just don't like the Yankees, and believe me, I get it, I understand. They have all this money and they get all this publicity and they're always in the news and so on and so forth. And after a while, you just get tired of hearing about the New York Yankees, New York Yankees. But there's no denying the fact that this team has added so much to the game of baseball that they can't just be considered another baseball team. They're a lot more than that. If you walk up to somebody on the street and say the word Babe Ruth or Mickey Mantle, they are immediately going to know who you're talking about. If you walk up to somebody on the street and say the name Muhammad Ali or George Foreman or Joe Frazier, they're immediately going to know who you're talking about. These are classic names that added something new, different, and exciting to the sport. It's the same thing with analog gear, and in particular, analog gear that becomes classic. They bring something new and something innovative to the recording industry. That's why they're considered classics. They're not just another piece of analog gear. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope to see you back again next week. But before you click that button and move on to the next video, I want you to do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, like the video, tell a friend, come back next week. I can't wait to see you. I've got a lot lined up for you. Until next time, everybody stay safe out there. Keep creating. G Sharp Jams out.